Can you guys hear me? Can I get a thumbs up or someone to unmute? Okay, great. Sorry, I just realized if I close my laptop and I use my main monitor that you guys can't hear me. So I apologize for that. So let's go back to the beginning. I am recording this presentation for to post on our website. During feel free to throw any of your questions in the chat box. I will, after we give presentation, we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. This is not meant to be an entirety of the grant presentation. It's just meant to be a quick overview so that everyone has some idea of what's going on. And then we'll have plenty of time in the end for asking questions. For now, I'm keeping everyone muted just so we don't get any feedback. So this is the Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure Grant, otherwise known as RFSI, office hours for the Columbia Plateau. We're going to go over 4 things and then we'll have a Q&A. So the first, we'll look at what RFSI is. We'll take a look at Oregon's program, take a look at the timeline, and then we'll look at the application process itself. So to start, what RFSI is. The purpose of this program is to build the middle of the supply chain resilience, so strengthen local and regional food systems. And this is through building expanded capacity for aggregation, processing, manufacturing, storing, transporting, wholesaling, distributing, and it's all of local or regionally produced food products. So essentially, the USDA defines the food chain as there's 4 steps in it. So first is actually growing the product. Second is processing. Third is wholesale distribution. And fourth is market. Really what this program is focused on is those middle 2 steps of processing and wholesaling. Once it hits something like the grocery store, that's not anything past that point is where this program stops, and anything before processing is where this program stops. So if you're looking for something for like on the farm, this program can't do that. Or if you're looking for marketing costs, this program can't do that. So that's the purpose of the program. Again, this is all, sorry, I should have said this at the beginning. Not having the mic threw me off a little bit there for a minute. So these are all requirements for all 50 states and territories that are getting these dollars. Everything until I say the Oregon program. So the purpose of this program, these allowable crops, the required entities, all that type of stuff are national level requirements that have passed down to the state that we have to follow. So allowable crops within this program are specialty crops which qualify as fruits, vegetables, tree nuts, horticulture, nursery, and herbs have to be human consumption. So the nursery one's a little hard there, but and horticulture as well, but it has to be for human consumption. So dairy, grains for human consumption, aquaculture, and other food products. This does exclude meat and poultry, but eggs are allowable. And aquaculture, we cannot do any wild caught seafood, but if any part of that seafood's life cycle was in a controlled environment, then it is considered aquaculture. It's not considered wild caught seafood. And those items would be available for, like example, like clams. Oysters, oysters would be allowable for the most part if they are farm raised. So a note on that, we can talk a little bit more on that. Columbia Plateau, you guys don't have a ton of aquaculture out there like the coastal regions. So pretty much anyone is eligible for this grant, but you have to operate in the middle of the supply chain. That's going to be the key for anything. So agricultural producers or processors or groups of producers and processors, nonprofits, local governments, tribal governments, institutions such as schools, universities, or hospitals. But again, you have to be doing middle of the supply chain activities. There are 2 tracks within this grant. The first is infrastructure, mainly what we'll focus on today. The second is equipment only. So the infrastructure one, grants are anywhere from $100,000 to $2 million. It's a 3-year grant period, so it'll end January 1st, 2027. There's either a 25% required matching or a 50% required matching, depending on the type of ownership of your organization. I'll explain that in a minute. You must expand capacity in the middle of the supply chain, which we just talked about. And the second track is equipment only. It basically is what it sounds like. So it's equipment only. It's purchasing, let's say, a processing line for your facility. All you need to purchase is that processing line. That would be an equipment only grant. If you need to purchase the processing line, install it, and then let's say train your staff on how to keep it clean, how to run it, all that stuff. As soon as you step out of just purchasing the piece of equipment, it becomes an infrastructure grant. So the equipment only is anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000. You have to purchase and receive the equipment within 1 year of the grant award. No matching is required, and it must again be the middle of the supply chain. So we can't go out there and buy Farmer Joe a tractor. It really has to be items for the middle of the supply chain. So cold storage, processing lines, transportation vehicles that are specialized equipment, and so on. So, as I mentioned, everything up until this point is federal regulations for all states. Now we're going to take a look at what the Oregon RFSI program is. So to start, we're going to keep the two tracks that are required by USDA. So we have the infrastructure, we have the equipment. The infrastructure projects are going to be required to report twice yearly for the life of their 3-year grants. And equipment grants are going to have a couple of reports that are required within the 1-year time period. We have a 15-member advisory-led group, or industry-led group for our advisory committee, which reviews the applications. I'll talk about that in a minute. But they're a cross-section of anyone who could potentially apply to this grant. We kind of took a cross-section of those folks and asked them to be on our advisory committee for this program. We received here in Oregon $5.9 million in funding. 2.8 of that is going to the infrastructure track. 1.2 is going to equipment, and $1 million is going to a state-led infrastructure project. This isn't going to be hard infrastructure, but more like training opportunities and so on for the middle of the supply chain. The remainder of those dollars is for the management of the grant, so ODA staff to actually do the state-led infrastructure project, but also to run the program. The division between the two tracks, equipment and infrastructure, was informed by a industry-wide survey that the department sent out when we were building the program, and that's how we decided on that division. So there's a section of this application that talks about what type of entity you are, as well as what type of groups you're impacting with your grant. So as I mentioned earlier, the 25% or the 50% matching, if you hit one of these groups, you can receive 25% matching requirement rather than the 50. So if you're a small underserved business owner, if you're a historically underserved farmer or rancher, if you are a new farmer or rancher, that one's not listed here, I apologize. But if you qualify under the small business administration categories of small business, women-owned small business, or veteran-owned small business, then you would qualify for the 25% matching. This also is for nonprofits. So if the nonprofit, let's say the board of directors the majority of the board of directors hits one of these categories, you could have several women, you could have a couple veterans, however the makeup of your board of directors is, then you would be allowed to get the 25% graduated match, reduced match. If you have several owners of your business, the same thing applies. So it really has to be, you have to meet these categories no matter what type of entity you are in order to get the 25% graduated match. So if you have any questions about this, please feel free to reach out. We are here to help you and help you kind of understand that. So I'm not going to read these out to you guys, but I want to make sure that you see them. These are our priorities for the infrastructure grant. So there are things like improving worker safety, improving the capacity to comply with food safety requirements, wastewater management. There's a few others in here. The last one here, though, is one I want to bring attention to. It says other goals identified by the Northwest Rocky Mountain Food Business Center. So the USDA got funding in the same Rescue Act dollars that fund this program to build out the Northwest Rocky Mountain Food Business Centers. These are food business centers across the state that are for each region. So ours is the Northwest Rocky Mountains. Essentially, what these food business centers do is they have directives by USDA to assist producers in their areas, in the priority areas and program areas that they see best fit their region. So I'll show you their website in a minute, but essentially Northwest Rocky Mountain, the Food Business Center has selected 4 areas that their Food Business Center is going to focus on. If your project hits one of their 4 areas, as well as one of these other infrastructure priorities, you can on the application check that your project hits that goal. You don't get any more points. You don't get any points based on your priorities other than that you hit priorities. You don't get any points added to your score if you also hit one of the Northwest Rocky Mountain ones, but states are required to work with the food business centers, and this is the way that Oregon has chose to work with them, is by trying to use their goals as some of our priorities in some of our federal programs. So that's what that one is. We can discuss that more in depth if you have questions. These are the priorities for equipment track. They're a little bit pared down because, again, they don't do any sort of installation. They don't do any sort of training, nothing like that. But this is installing new equipment, modernizing, expanding existing equipment, those types of things. Again, the last goal here is the Rocky Mountain Food Business Center that I just talked about. You guys can read all of these on our request for applications, or what we call the RFA. It's available on our website. The infrastructure one is currently available. The equipment one will become available February 1st. So, speaking of February 1st, let's look at the timeline. The infrastructure grants we open for a little bit longer because they're essentially double the length more than double the length in an application. So the infrastructure applications are currently open. They've been open since January 1st. We will close the request for applications February 29th, 2024 at noon. I will show you guys here in a minute where you guys can find application instructions, but when you go to upload your application to us, please do not wait till noon on the 29th. The system that we use can get overwhelmed easily, and we don't want to miss out on your application. So please make sure that you submit, let's say 11 o'clock on the 29th, or even better, the 28th. Just making sure that you submit a few minutes, a few days early will really help your application in the long run because it makes sure that we actually get it. So the equipment request for applications is going to open February 1st. That is also when the application itself will become available. We will close it the same day, so February 29th, 2024 at noon. On the right-hand side, you can see a breakdown of all of the review timeline that we are hoping to stick to. So once we get all of the documents, the applications will go to the advisory committee the first couple weeks in March. Then they will have about a month to review. We will hold an advisory committee discussion that first week in April. The director's office will select by the end of April, and hopefully by the 1st of May, applicants will get notifications as to whether or not they received grants. We will then take May to review the grants that got selected, edit them, make them perfect for the USDA, and submit by the end of May to USDA for approval. We are hoping, fingers crossed, toes crossed, all of our appendages crossed, that we will be approved by USDA for funding August of 2024. They could go faster. We could see money in June. We could see money in October. It really depends on how quickly the USDA moves through their review process, which they are setting up now. So we should have a better idea of the estimated date by that May time that we turn our application into USDA. That August date or whatever date that USDA says you're good to go is when you will also start receiving funds. So this is a disbursement-based program, not a reimbursement. So you will get, depending on your match amount, you will either get 75% of your grant request or 50% of your grant request when you sign your agreement. So essentially what that means is you'll get money up front to start your project. And that's both for the infrastructure and the equipment. The equipment side, so you can put down payments and whatnot and get that whole ball rolling. Infrastructure side is if you need, to start doing some, I don't know, let's say architectural design work or some underground work to get your project started. So the application process, I want to talk this through with you guys so you can have some clear understanding of what your application will do. So first, once we receive those applications the end of February, program staff, so me, will review each application for allowability, completeness, and feasibility. Essentially, this step is to make sure that we can actually fund your grant, because it's not worth us to review and have a grant that we can't actually fund go through the entire review process. If your grant is not allowable, we'll let you know why it's not allowable. But that's the first step. Stage number 2, the application goes to the advisory committee for review. There are score sheets currently available at the last couple pages of the request for applications, or RFA, that's available on our website. So you can look how you will be scored by the advisory committee. Stage 3, the ODA leadership actually selects the grant. So they take the score sheets from the advisory committee, the whole grants, all of the comments, all of the discussion that we have when we come together as an advisory committee, and they talk about whether or not a program needs to get funded or should get funded. They also bring into consideration a few other factors that the advisory committee doesn't. So where the project is located in the state, number of beneficiaries of the project. They look at maybe the crops that are involved and the types of projects, because essentially we don't want all the $5.9 million going to one crop or one location in the state. We want to make sure that it's equitable for everyone across the state and that the dollars get spent to the best of their ability. And that's what the ODA leadership brings into this application step. Lastly, once the ODA leadership has selected, we've gone through that edit process that I talked about a minute ago. The USDA will do a final review on the grants and approve them to move forward. Once the USDA gives us a thumbs up, you get your money. So there are a few required documents for each application. I go into great depth in the YouTube video that is available on our website called Application Training, I believe, Program Overview and Application Training. Both the equipment and the infrastructure program require cover pages and application. We have a template for both of those. The attachment A and B, we also have a template for, but attachment A is a critical resource and infrastructure letter. Essentially what this letter is saying that you have a critical resource or have a piece of infrastructure already in place that your program requires, and that it will be there for the life of the grant. So for example, if you are renting a piece of property that you want to build a facility on, we need a letter from the renter that state, or the owner of the property that states that they will rent to you for at least the life of the grant, so that we know that halfway through your grant, you're not going to get kicked off property, that type of stuff. Attachment B is really for the infrastructure side of things. It's a matching funds verification letter document. You have to have your matching funds secured before you apply for the program. So essentially what that means is you need a letter from the matching funds source that says that they are going to provide those matching funds. Let's say you're building a facility and the plumber has decided they're going to do an in-kind contribution of their time. You would need a letter from the plumber that says that they're going to put in X amount of hours, which is X amount of dollars worth of their time towards your project. Again, we have a template for this, but you'll need to submit that for every source. So if like the plumber is giving you in-kind contributions, if your company has cash dollars that they're going to put towards it, you need a letter from your accountant that says you're giving X amount of dollars. If you're getting a loan from a bank, you need the bank to fill that out, and so on. Again, I give you detailed information about this in the YouTube video, which I will show you how to get to in a minute. So here's our email. Please feel free to reach out at any time. It's resilience@oda.oregon.gov. I will also put this in the chat so you guys have it. But that is the end of our presentation here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I see that we probably have a few chat boxes. Great. I will. Perfect. I will answer these really quick, but if you two want to put your email in the chat box, Steve and Scott, because you two are the only ones here, I will add you to the listserv as well as send out the presentation and the other document I'm going to show you here in a second. So, Scott, your first question is a new farmer less than 10 years like USDA? Yes. These are USDA dollars, so we use USDA definition for new farmer. Okay, so the next question, Scott, you had is when would we learn if we're funded at the ODA decision or not until USDA? You learn at the ODA decision, so you'll learn by May 1st, because we're not going to move any grants forward that we don't intend to fund. Any other questions? Go ahead, Scott. Steve, feel free to unmute yourself. Steve, your hand's up. If you're talking, we can't hear you. Still can't hear you. Sounds good, Steve. Feel free to chat. That's fine. While you are getting that while your question, I want to show you guys another couple of documents here. So I said I would share out the Northwest Rocky Mountain. This is their website. It's I'll show you a document where it'll be in a minute. Hold on. But the high priority issues, this middle section in this green ribbon, these are their priority areas, their goals that you need to look at and see if your project fits in order to check that on your application. Pretty straightforward. This is the infrastructure website. There's a ton of information here, but this program overview and application training video link right here is the YouTube video that I talked about. The first half hour, 45 minutes is giving you a good breakdown of the program. The remaining 45 minutes to an hour is a look at the application and a step-by-step how to actually fill the application out, both for the infrastructure and for the equipment. After that, it's how to submit it. So where on our website you'll find the submission link and so on. All of this is basically what I've gone over today. And then here's the timeline of items, all of our meetings that we've had so far. This meeting, this January 16th meeting will be, after our recording is available, will be posted here. Here is again the application training video that I talked about. But here's the resource section. This will be your best friend while you're applying. So this first one is some frequently asked questions. The next is the RFA. So I talked about this a couple of times. When you click on this, this is the written version of our YouTube video as well as everything I've talked about today. But it goes by, pretty much everything. So it has the match verification letter, and it has the proposal score sheet that I talked about clear at the bottom here. You can take a look at that and see how you will be scored. Other than that, here's the application training video for a third time. Please view it. One thing to note is the application template itself. When you click on it, you'll get this error message. Essentially, because the document is dynamic, so as you fill it out, the form like expands, or you can add lines or take lines away. Because of that ability, you won't be able to fill it out on a browser. You have to actually download the item. You can see I've got a little arrow with an underscore under it. You download the item and then open it as on your computer. Don't open it in a browser. You have to actually open it in Adobe. In order to do that, once you download it, you should go to your files. Let's see. Here, I can find mine really quick. If you go to your files, once you've downloaded it, you can pull it open in Adobe itself, rather than, come on, just like that. So pull it open in Adobe, which is a totally different program than your internet browser. Other than that, there are a few, here are your attachments. This is the UEID information and a few other items that you may need. So, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Steve. Okay. Steve, how are awards to be allocated? If a total application for infrastructure grant exceeds 2.9 million, how will awards be prioritized? 100% of top applications based on scoring sheets, or reduce the grant so that the applications get some more dollars. So, thank you, Scott, for letting me know that nothing came through. I will fix that. The top so we're most likely not going to award the full 2 million. So any grant can only ask for up to $2 million from the program. If you ask for more, you are not fitting within the bounds of the program and you will not be funded. If you ask for less than $100,000, same thing applies. So you have to make sure that your request is within the bounds of the program. This is because we think the program is going to be extremely popular and we only have this funding one time. So if someone asks, Scott or Steve, I'm going to change a little bit here. If someone asks for the full $2 million, we are most likely not going to award that to any one company. We are reserving the right to award it if the project is for like an entire region and it's going to help half of the population of the state of Oregon. Then we reserve the right to give all $2 million or $2 million of a request to one entity. However, we don't see that being the most beneficial use of the grant dollars. So I would ask for a portion of your project to be funded by the grant rather than an entire project. You have to remember you also only have until January 1st of 2027. If your grant is not completed by then, you don't get the rest of your dollars. So any of the work between essentially August of 24 to January 1 of 2027, you have to do all of the work that you're planning. So you've got to make sure that the grant that you're trying to do is actually feasible in that time frame and for the funding that you're requesting. We suggest that you request for a portion of your project rather than, let's say you had a $2.9 million project, that you don't request for the full 2.9 million, that you request for a portion of it. Top applications are based on scoring sheet or reduce the grant so some applications get some dollars. So if there's a portion of your grant that is unallowable, so for example, you say, we're going to go ahead and half of our cold storage, let's start there. Let's say half of your cold storage is for wild-caught seafood, but half of it's for apples. We can only fund 50%. We can only fund the 50% that's allowable for the apples themselves. We can't fund the remainder of that cold storage. The remainder of that cold storage also cannot be brought as match. So matching funds have to be allowable within the bounds of the program. Essentially what that means is exactly what I said. If half of your cooler is going to be used for wild caught seafood, you can't say, okay, Grant, pay for half and I'll pay for the other half and bring that as matching. That won't work. If you have something like that where you deal in a variety of products, essentially you take a best guess estimate about how much percentage you do of unallowable items, and then you take that percentage out if that product or that area is going to be used for unallowable items. If you're buying, like, let's say a processing line for apples, but your facility also processes meat, as long as the processing line is only going to be used for apples, you could ask for 100% of that processing line funding from the grant. All you see is web explorer soon. Okay. So sorry about that, Scott. I'll try to do a share here in a second after I ask your next one. I expect the grant to be oversubscribed. Yes. I expect all of our federal grants to always be oversubscribed. This grant is very unique in the fact that it allows for construction. It's an infrastructure grant. It's not a one-to-one necessarily match of your amount. You know, it's 50% or 25%. And so with the interest that we've seen, I expect it to be oversubscribed. Yes. Any other questions? Let's see here. Can you see my screen now? Yes, great. Excellent. So, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Come on. Sorry. Again, not what I wanted to do, but that's okay. So this is the application. So, let me open our website again to show you guys. So this is what our website looks like. Can you guys see that? Are we good? Yes, great. So our website, as I mentioned a couple of times when you heard me and didn't see it, but here is the program overview and application training YouTube video. You can click on this link. It'll take you to YouTube, obviously with a ad, and you can watch that there. This is essentially a quick and dirty version of everything that I've talked to you about so far today. Here's the timeline of events. As I mentioned, our recording will go here when it's ready and we upload it. So hopefully by the end of this week. The application training video is right here as well. Feel free to click on it. It goes to the same YouTube video. Here's the rest of the timeline that I discussed just a minute ago. And then here are the resources. This is, like I said, this section is going to be your best friend in all of this. Okay, yeah, you don't need to read it. Steve, you can at least just see it. So the resources section here, let me see if I can get a little bit bigger. Come on, computer. Oh, there we go. So the resources section is at the very bottom of the website. So just keep scrolling and keep scrolling and keep scrolling. So once you hit the resources, there are a couple of things I want to point out. The first one is the ODA request RSI FAQ. So this FAQ is going to have a bunch of information for you for things like what's the definition of the middle of the supply chain that I talked about earlier. Here are the definitions for the 25% graduated match group. So as we asked earlier, does the USDA definition of 10 years for beginning farmer or rancher, that is what it is. That is shown here as well. There are a few application questions, eligible entities, crops, unallowable costs, matching funds information, and so on. This is a great document to reference if you have questions before you email me, but feel free to email me. The next one is the request for applications. This document is everything that I've talked about today, everything in our video that I discuss, but just in a written form. The one thing that I do want to show you is the last couple pages here. So if you scroll all the way to the bottom, is the score sheet that the advisory committee will use. So feel free to look through that. It's a 2-page score sheet, and review that item at your leisure. This is for the infrastructure grant. When the equipment grant becomes open, that will also be posted here. Here again is the application training video. Please, 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 please use it. It's very helpful. The next is the grant template. As I mentioned, you'll get an error message when you open the template. You'll see this error message. You need to download up here in the upper right-hand corner. I've got a little arrow with a line underneath. You need to download the application, or you can save it depending on if you use Apple versus PC products. You download it here, or save it to your actual computer itself and then open it in your computer. If you go to open it in your computer and you open it with the internet, you will still get this error message. If you go to your computer and actually open it with Adobe, this is what you should see. Again, it's because it's a dynamic form and it's a USDA required form, so I can't change that. Unfortunately, I can't upload it to Google Drive and share it that way. It would also not work. So if you have any issues with this, please give us a holler and I can talk you through it individually. Your 2 attachment A and B are here, and a few other items that might be useful for you. So sam.gov for a UEI, the small business roadmap, and a few other things that might be helpful. That is our web page. The other item I wanted to show you guys is something I will send out to you after this meeting has concluded. And this is the Resilient Food Systems Grant link document. This is just a bunch of links that might be useful to you as you go through your application. So first and foremost is the email and my contact information. So I will put that in the chat here. And 541-913. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to that email or give me a call. That email is monitored by several of our staff members. You should have a response in 24, 48 hours. If you haven't had a response in 72 hours, please reach out again. We know this is a tight timeline, and so we want to be responsive. The other items on this document that you guys might find useful. The first is the RFSI website, so the main ODA website that I just showed you all of the resources from. The second is the request for applications itself, so you can view that document that I showed you where the score sheets were. Third is the application training video. Again, please watch it. Please use it. It's a great resource. I apologize, it's my voice for 2 hours, but the third is the USDA FAQs. This link might not work anymore. I need to update that to the ODA FAQs, which will take you to this document. I will update that before I send it out. The next is the UEI. So the unique entity identifier basically tells us and the federal government that you have not defrauded, fraud, waste, or abuse on any other federal dollars, and that you can receive federal dollars. If you cannot receive federal dollars, you cannot receive these grant dollars, and so on. Every entity will need to have a unique entity identifier in order to get grant funds. So you need to have this by the time we submit to USDA. So by the end of May of 2024. It's not an arduous process, but sometimes it takes a little bit time for sam.gov to actually get you a UEI back. So please start this process now. You do need it in your application when you submit to ODA, but if you are still in the process of getting your UEI when you submit, in the UEI line, you can say, submitted to sam.gov waiting for a UEI. That's fine. But you do need a UEI to receive federal dollars. It's better to start this process sooner rather than later. You don't need a registered UEI. A registered one is when you receive federal dollars directly from the federal government. You just need a regular one. Here's the Small Business Administration link. This again is going to talk about the types of small business that are allowable to meet their, well, this is also their definitions, which we have put in that FAQ document that's on our website. To determine if you fall under the priority areas of what to get a 25% graduated match or a 50% graduated match, please use this link and go to section 9.1 on page 27 to determine that. Essentially what this does, 9.1, this is the definitions that are listed on our FAQs as well. So these are the areas to help you determine if you're a mid-sized producer or if you are an institution, nonprofit, what you do. Value-added producer, veteran farmer, and so on. This has a few more definitions than our FAQ document, which is why it's here. And the last link is the Northwest Rocky Mountain Food Business Center. That's also will be sent out to you. So Scott has a question. If I have a UEI, but my SAM.gov registration is not current, is having a UEI enough? I want to say no, but I'm not sure if having a SAM.gov registration, not having that up to date voids your UEI. So I would go to SAM.gov and I would look up your UEI number, and you can use this check entity status right here, and you sign in and get started and double check that your UEI is still working. If your UEI still works and you don't have a SAM.gov registration, that's fine, but make sure that your UEI still works. Because again, I can't give you federal dollars if you don't have one. Let's see. All right. That is everything I have for you guys today. If there are any more questions, we can stay on the chat and keep answering them. We've got another 45 minutes open, but if you guys don't have any more questions, then I will take your emails and send you some documents after I update that one links document and add you guys to our listserv as well. Steve is typing. I want to make sure that we answer all questions. Great. Again, if you guys have any more questions, feel free to email the Resilient System Grant at oda.oregon.gov or give me a call. Again, my number is in the chat. Feel free to save that. Thanks so much. Have a great afternoon. And yeah, I don't have anything else for you guys. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.